News. Great 2 days. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, guys. And thank you for your support, folks. Where else are you to get stuff like this? We need your support to stay on the air. WorldviewFoundation.com. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
They're coming up after this. Okay, it's on, all right. Sorry about that. But, the workforce is coming up next, and one of his talking points is over half of the people going through the process of transgenderism are on the autistic spectrum. And he told me earlier that if you include all neurodivergence, it's like 90. So as someone on the spectrum myself, it's like, this breaks my heart to see people most similar to me and that have been through a lot of what I've been through, going through this. And it's a tragedy. So, and quite frankly, I call it the Holocaust of our time. So what we gotta do is bring these people who have most likely been through some intense trauma and hardship. Like, I'm no exception. I've had some crazy things happen to me. So I created an organization called the Autistic Freedom Network, so that all these people, all these kids that have been through unimaginable harm, like, to put that into perspective, just imagine if COVID restrictions lasted your whole childhood. Like, just put that in perspective. That's what our lives are like. So these kids all deserve a leader, someone that'll fight for them, someone that'll give them a voice, that'll give them protection and make sure that they live the best life possible. That's what I'm here for, and we're gonna do it.
That is awesome. So please take time to reach out to him and learn more about his organization, because that is amazing. And we have so much more work to do in that area. So thank you for what you're doing. Raise your hand if you have a table out there. And Erica, you'll come around.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Faces simulcast. Well, today, you just heard it. We're introducing the Autistic Freedom Network. I've made no secret that I'm the dad of an autistic son, a son who I homeschooled from junior high all the way through high school graduation, and the challenges our family and he faced in various government and non-government systems, and what we had to do just to figure out how to help him. That's why I'm very excited to do the show today about the Autistic Freedom Network and have its founder as my guest, who you just saw in that opening video. Why do we need this? Well, I'll let them tell you from their website. Listen up, folks. Quote, people on the autism spectrum have been forgotten for several decades while facing unbelievable abuse. Our struggle is worse than that of a third world country, from the highest rate of social isolation to the highest unemployment rate in the world, to an unbelievable rate of trans identification. The reasons for this struggle go far beyond autism or other neurodivergences alone. We face an inhumane treatment from our doctors, teachers, social workers, and politicians. All of them are using our diagnosis to justify the so-called treatment we're put through, and will cite misconceptions and outright lies to claim it's all evidence-based. To get a picture of what we're dealing with, imagine if COVID lasted your whole childhood from infancy to coming of age. That should give you an idea of what it's like to grow up diagnosed autistic. For those who haven't been diagnosed, the struggles of their neurodivergence go untreated, leading to loneliness and neglect, but they're not usually subject to outright discrimination. In this tragic status quo, the Autistic Freedom Network was founded by Sven Sharpen, my guest today. The AFN vows to make sure that every person on the spectrum or with some other form of neurodivergence like ADHD, OCD, bipolarity is properly supported, treated, and has their biblical and constitutional rights respected first and foremost. No child deserves to grow up without a childhood. And we will end this hardship with the goals that AFN has laid out. Sven, my new friend that I met just a couple of months ago where you gave that speech out in Colorado, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure, it's an honor, and a big blessing. Like, this is God's work right here. So,
Oh, it absolutely is. He brought us together, and I'm so grateful for it. Before we go too deep into AFN, the organization itself, talk about your personal experiences in growing up and your personal background and what led you up to this decision to start this great organization.
well, I'm gonna make this as brief as I can, but to make an incredibly long story short, I was diagnosed with autism before I turned 2 years old, and in fact, next month will have marked 20 years since I was diagnosed with autism. And in reaction to this diagnosis, my parents were obviously they took me to the doctors. There's no way they didn't. And they were told I had to go through a process called early intervention, which the whole point of which is to prepare you for regular school. But all this really did was take away key toddler development and key playtime away. I mean, it wasn't as bad for me as it was for a lot of other kids on the spectrum, but it still
Mm-hmm.
took away key development. And, once I did get into kindergarten, not like they it's not like they abused me, but they just didn't really know what they were doing. I was probably the first autistic kid they ever had, honestly. This was like 16 years ago. And it was around the same time I was put on Zoloft. Yes, Zoloft at 5 years old, along with risperidone. There have been scandals over these drugs that I've been put on that I only got off earlier this year, about 6 months ago. And I was put on this at 5 years old, and it went all the way to 21, so I don't even know what it's done to me. So, and then the third one is clonidine, which I'm still getting off of today. And, after this, I was obviously homeschooled for half a year, but then I went back to public school, which turned out to be a mistake because they kept trying to give me infantile assignments. But thank God throughout elementary school, my parents were able to fight off a lot of these crazy people who think that I'm dysfunctional when I'm not. And
Mm-hmm.
once I got into middle school, it got even worse because, as time went on, especially since Obama was president, and I think schools, not only did they get more funding, but they also got more authoritarian. And I received some pretty bad treatment in middle school. Like, I couldn't really say anything without getting in trouble. And, like, the worst thing they did was they forced me to move schools when I was 14. Like, I couldn't even go to a government school that didn't have what's called an effective needs program, which is what I was forced into from
Mm-hmm.
my diagnosis. So I was forced to move to another school in a different town. So if you think it's bad that zip code defines your school choice, just wait until you have a diagnosis of something where that's going to be what's determining your school choice. And over the course of the years, like, my parents tried to send me to Christian school, to charter school, or just schools
Mm-hmm.
that weren't government schools. And every time they were like, oh, we don't know how to deal with autistic kids. That's what I've been told anyway, but there could be something more sinister going on. And in fifth and sixth grade, I was also given preschool level material by the social workers, by the special education people, even though I was smarter than my classmates in both of those grades. But back to when I was forced to move schools for my first year of high school, I was forced to go to another school, and this put me in a really deep depression because I'd spent the last 4 years before that developing some pretty good relationships, many of which I've still been able to hang on to this day. And, like, I almost went trans because of a lot of this. I mean, there were other factors too, but being
Mm-hmm.
forced to move schools, like, it really, really hurt and put me through an effeminate phase, actually. I mean, there were other things too that
Mm-hmm.
played a role in this, but thank God I did not ever identify as trans. That would have just been really bad. But in my case, I avoided it, and, thanks to the Lord God Almighty. And but it was still an extremely depressing year. Like I missed my friends for like
Hmm.
I had suicidal ideations. And the only reason they did this, well, they did this for my autism diagnosis, and my parents were threatened with my failure. They said if he doesn't move schools, he's going to fail. That's pretty much what they were saying. And so my parents were sort of forced to allow this to happen.
Hmm.
And it was really sad. I mean, I did get back to my friends. This only happened for 1 year, but the damage was done for one, and COVID took out another year and a half of my high school, which, is interesting. COVID itself is only a mere footnote in my story. But,
Hmm.
I did graduate on time, but I've been trying to just start my life, and then I've realized that most of my peers have gone trans. The things that they went through, that I've went through, a lot of the peers that have went through the same things have all gone trans, and it's just a tragedy considering humans need peers to talk to. We deserve to have neighbors that'll understand us and that we can understand. And it's just sad to see this happen, to see the beauty and the character and the charisma of my peers just be completely faded out by this trans ideology that is we're very vulnerable to, and I'd say we're being targeted. So that's why I founded the Autistic Freedom Network, to fight off not just the trans ideology, but
Hmm.
fight off all of the horrible policies sponsored by our doctors and politicians and teachers that are putting us through all of this. And we got to do something about it once and for all. We got to fight.
Yeah, exactly right, man. I'm glad you started the organization. I wish it had been around, or that I had even thought to start it. But parents are so absorbed. In my case, I was just totally absorbed
Mm,
with homeschooling my son. I took him out at the beginning of seventh grade because the system just couldn't provide uh, the environment that he needed in order to be successful because of things like paras. The thing that bothered him the most was they assigned a para to him early on, and if you don't like the personality of that para, you really don't have a choice. And he would act out, and of course, then they put him in isolation rooms and those kind of things. And once he got out of middle school, he was big, so I didn't want him to hurt himself or hurt anybody else
mm.
when they were putting him in holds and things like that, because he was acting out in response to some of these so-called methodologies of wanting to get help. So I'm glad you started this group up. I think it'll be a place where parents can go, one of many resources, obviously, to try to see what the reality is, because the reality, Sven, is that autistic children and other kids with is it you call it neurodivergencies, like
Well, that's
ADHD,
just,
they're
yeah,
just
I
as
just use it as
smart
an
as
umbrella
everybody
term.
else. Or yeah, usually
Yeah,
they're more
we're still the same
intellectually,
people.
and they're
Yeah,
usually smarter than their peers from
often,
an
yes.
intellectual perspective. Quite often, not every time, but quite often,
Yeah.
and they don't need to be uh, to try to overlay standard discipline or even increase discipline because you think it's right because of the problem that they have or the way they're made up and their brains work. Generally, is the wrong way to go, right?
Yeah, and don't even get me started on the whole like isolation rooms thing. I've heard some really terrible things from parents things that have
Mm,
happened to their kids by these people who are supposedly in the special education field. And
mm,
like that's who I'm fighting against. Like the special education social workers. And come to think of it, many of them are part of communist teachers unions and stuff. And,
mm.
yesterday I went to the state capitol on accident thinking there was an event, and I overheard someone, "Oh, we work with autistic kids," someone on the liberal side of things. And I'm like,
Hmm.
"Shoot, this is who's doing the abuse."
Yeah, that's what our society needs to understand, is that you don't have to abuse these kids. You don't have to
Right.
overly discipline them. You just have to find the space that their unique brains are capable of operating in so that they can be integrated fully into our society. my youngest son, he just turned 21. Yesterday he passed his national certification test for automotive technology mechanic. He's finished 2 years of community college doing that. He's a welder. He's doing fantastic. But we just had to find the right space for him to be able to learn and grow and all that. And the government systems and even the nonprofit systems really weren't effective at it. We got to take a commercial break. When we come back, Ben, I want to dive into what you were talking about, the control that school systems, other government agencies, the pharmaceutical industry puts on the parents that force them to think they have no choice but to put their kids into these really authoritarian programs. We'll be right back with the founder of the Autistic Freedom Network, Ben Sharpen.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
Hello, Douglas County School Board members. My name is Sven Sharpen. I'm a former student, graduated 3 years ago. I'm going to tell you what life is like for a student on the autism spectrum where the district decides how the child is raised, which is why I advocate for an opt-in policy, because parents deserve better and to know exactly what's happening with their kids. I was given preschool level assignments in 5th grade without my parents' consent, and the only reason they know now is because I told them, even though I was smarter than my 5th grade classmates. But this came to a head when I was 14 years old, when Douglas County school board officials, or just school officials in general, decided they were going to choose where I attend school. And I was forced to attend Douglas County High School, not far from here, simply because of my autism diagnosis. And I lost on 4 years of my relationships, completely undone, and an entire year of high school. And this happened because my parents were threatened with my failure if I did not be forced to move. Even though I was not failing, I did really good socially, and Douglas County School District officials took that from me. This caused a serious depression with suicidal ideation, and it felt like my life didn't matter. Parents should be raising their kids, not schools. These Colorado health surveys include a lot of inappropriate topics that children should not be learning about, like gender ideology. Children shouldn't be forced to participate in this without parental knowledge, let alone consent. I've been trying to find support for what I've been through because of district policies, and I can't find peers because now they're all trans because of frickin' surveys like these, as well as the social hardships that were artificially created. This is a health survey that must be an opt-in, and I encourage a vote yes on making this an opt-in, because parents need to know exactly what's going on with their kids, and especially those on the autism spectrum, because parents have their God-given right to raise their kids, not school boards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday. And we've got that man with us today. He's the founder of the Autistic Freedom Network. And Sven, that was a great job at that testimony in that venue there, talking to the government. And one of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit deeper about is this control that government schools try to get over parents. Threatening that you're going to fail is one thing, but what are some of the other specific types of control mechanisms that you have seen or that other people have told you about that folks need to be aware of from these school systems?
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of stuff, and quite frankly, not we need to do more research into this because I don't know all this for sure just yet, and that's what I'm certainly going to be focusing on. But from experience, it's not just the threatening parents with their kids' failure that I've seen. I've seen where schools, you've seen this a ton of times, where schools will cover up what they're doing to kids, like where
Hmm.
kids get trans behind their backs. And when I was given preschool level material in fifth grade, the school obviously didn't bring that up to my parents. The only reason my parents know about that is because I told them. I'm pretty sure I told them like the day of, or at least in the days following. And like they just cover things up, and they also try to bully people into compliance. The left, just the left as a whole does this, where they
Hmm.
have some policy that makes no sense, and special education is no different than this. And they have all these messed up rules, and if somebody
Hmm.
breaks them, like they'll really, you've seen what they do to these kids as a form of quote unquote punishment, even though it's more like abuse, the isolation rooms. And I've seen worse where kids have also been like sat on, they've been physically and verbally harmed, and some have even been labeled as future school shooters, which is just
Hmm.
absolutely insane. And they do this to a fringe to bully people into compliance. Obviously, I didn't feel threatened when I was being attacked like this. I did stand up for myself and my parents saying, "This isn't right. What are we doing?" And obviously, they don't listen to you. They'll never listen to you. They think you're worthless. Of course, they're not going to listen to you. So, and of course, they have all this government power and they use diagnosis to justify a lot of it, along with the lies
Hmm.
that we've seen. Our misconceptions. I mean, it might be true for some, but for most, it's not. And it's most certainly being paid for by taxpayer dollars to keep this thing alive. And
Hmm.
the last thing I'll say is they don't really talk about, first of all, they don't even give you things you should be learning like math, literacy, science, and history. They instead teach about self esteem and SEL, which I've grown to learn is a Marxist indoctrination program. And they
Hmm.
always ask, the first thing they say to you every day is, "Oh, how do you feel? What zone are you in?" Usually that's red, yellow, or green, or it's like a number ranked from 1 through 5. Usually 1 through 5. Sometimes I've seen 1 through 4, 1 through 3,
Hmm.
with 1 being you're happy, and then the maximum number being you're out of control. And I've also seen sort of de facto social credit where there's a leveling system where the more loyal you are to them and the more obedient to the system you are, the easier it is to sort of work your way out of the program. Whereas the more rebellious and disloyal or just unacademic you are, the lower you go. And let's be honest, you don't really have freedom of speech, movement, socialization, or really faith at all in these programs. So it's pretty much just communism in our schools that's existed since at least the 90s. I mean, this has been going on for probably 30 years or so. And we got to do something about this. I think this should be illegal, quite frankly. There's better ways to raise kids, and parents need to know about all this that's going on.
Yeah, and one of the things that we ran into was we just didn't know enough about proposed treatments of the condition because we didn't know enough about our son's condition. We didn't actually get an autism
Mm.
diagnosis till he was 9, and we started taking him to doctors when he was 18 months old because something happened in his growth that changed him, and but we just weren't very familiar with some of these proposals, like the medications you mentioned that you were on initially.
Mm.
Risperidone was one of the ones that they put our son on, and he was
Wow.
misdiagnosed as pediatric bipolar. And
Wow.
he was very very young, like you mentioned, and everything. How do we help parents understand that the pharmaceutical companies are also exercising this control over the parents to get their medications into these kids inappropriately? How do we help them understand how that's happening?
Well, I can't remember exactly what my parents had to deal with, but I was dealing with this sort of thing, maybe a slightly more extreme version of what every kid would deal with. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
heard things like running off uncontrollably or having emotions that are hard to control, which, one of the things about being autistic is your emotions, they're the same, but they might be more intense.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of the traditional methods of, more relaxing things or barriers to keep kids in, my parents were instead just told, put this kid on medication and this is your only option. Most certainly that was the only option they were given. My dad recently told me actually that he didn't want to put me on medications. He just wanted to let me grow up naturally, and I agree with that. But my mom was like, "No, we have to put him on meds." But because mom did a lot of the healthcare stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and she was most certainly told by doctors that it was the only option for me, and it was just a huge it was in hindsight a mistake. And in the
Mm-hmm.
first few weeks I was miserable from what I was told by my parents. Like, I was only a few years old, I don't really remember much of that, but
Mm-hmm.
I hear it was terrible. And it's just, I have no clue what it did, but one of the things it did do was give me these random twitches for life that are uncontrollable. So if you hear
Mm-hmm.
about stemming, that might be chemical,
Okay.
and it was caused in reaction to me having a diagnosis of autism. Now, if a kid had that and didn't have a diagnosis of autism, it would probably be a different story. They would probably just be like, "Oh, put up baby barriers or something,"
Mm-hmm.
or I don't know, let him play with his favorite toys. I don't know, but the reaction of what somebody who's diagnosed with autism and someone who's not is pretty much they're complete opposite, and it makes no sense when we're talking about the same thing, different reaction, and we got to do something about this. But my
Yeah.
parents were inexperienced. They weren't exactly very they didn't know a whole lot about parenting when I was first diagnosed. Like, I'm their oldest child, and I was only a little under 2 years old, so they didn't really know what to do. So they just relied on big pharma to tell them what to do, which has obviously turned out to be a mistake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's we
Yeah. That's something that I mean, our son was our youngest. He's our fifth. But we weren't familiar
mm,
with the conditions and the treatments for it, if there were any necessary, really. So, yeah, we went through years and years of different medications and different tactics
wow.
and everything. And finally, in seventh grade, after 2 weeks of that, where he was having to change classes and he just wasn't able to work in that environment, I pulled him out and
Wow.
decided to homeschool him. But the very next step that I took was remove him from all medication. And what I
Mm,
found 8 months after the medications were completely out of his system, that I was able to figure out a way to take a really good, strong curriculum that didn't have any of the craziness in it. It was just the basics of math, reading, science, and history.
all right.
But give him the space. He just needed the right space to be able to get it done. And he did fine. Not one outburst of aggression the whole
Mm,
time I homeschooled him. Where, like I said, he had a pair in middle school going into seventh grade because they were concerned about that. And I think it was the meds that were really causing that because what the real deal
yeah.
is what you talked about, is that these kids they just have a different way of a different need for their environment, even though their reaction may be stronger, but it's pretty much the same as a kid that doesn't have autism. You know what I mean?
Right.
Uh, and I just don't think people understand that. Talk about some of the key misconceptions that your group, as one of the goals, is to debunk the misconceptions about autistic kids, real quick, before we get to this break. What are some of the key misconceptions that you want to debunk?
Well, there's quite a lot, and I don't have time to talk about them all, but some of the
Mm-hmm.
most common ones, like, really the most common one is that of a child that is dysfunctional, like a child that can't do anything for themselves, like they're nonverbal, they're
Mm-hmm.
not potty trained, they're just incapable of living life as it is set up. And I understand that's a real thing. I've seen it myself many times, and I feel terrible
Mm-hmm.
for them. And I'm glad we've got RFK Jr. to talk about it. But the problem is they think that's me. They thought that was me. And there's a ton of others, like they think we don't have empathy, they think we don't have the same feelings, they think we should be controlled more, they think we have outbursts all the time at random. Like it's really insane the things that have come up from all these misconceptions. Like, and the treatment you're talking about is experimental. Like we don't know the effects of all this, and I'm trying to share it with you right now. And like even to this day, I'm still struggling socially. Like I'd say I'm socially years behind because of what I was put through. So it was all because of the lies that I just mentioned. And there's a whole lot more that, check me out on my YouTube page if you want to see all of that. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
What's your YouTube channel called?
It's just Sven Sharpen.
Okay, great. Well, we got to take another break. When we come back, I want to dive into this trans issue, because Sven told me that the autistic kids are many, many times more susceptible to falling for the trans hoax than any other group. So I want to get a good understanding of what that means from his perspective. We'll be right back with the founder of Autistic Freedom Network, Sven Sharpen.
What's going on today? Why are we here?
Well, we're here to testify against HB 251312, easily the worst bill that any state has ever proposed in the history of our country. And what it does is it basically defines, what is it called, misgendering and dead naming as a form of coercive control, and it will steal your child if you refuse to allow them to trans. And it also has a clause in it that says if you don't affirm somebody's delusion, then the state comes after you. So, and as an autistic person who is well aware that this transgender ideology is going after my people is just heartbreaking and crushing. In fact, just last night, I saw a post of a woman whose breast had been cut off who was autistic, and it filled me with sadness and rage. And now they're trying to pass a bill that will steal autistic children. I'd say half the victims are autistic. And it will steal autistic children and castrate and mutilate them without loving families. So it basically takes away what little we have left. All we have left is our bodies and our families, and they're destroying that. So that's why I'm here, and I think autistic people need a voice. And when it comes to gender ideology, they target us because they know we're vulnerable, they know we struggle, they know that they can easily exploit us for money and votes, so that we can be dependent on Big Pharma for life, and that we could continue to vote for politicians that would pass legislation like this. So this is the issue, and part of the problem is we don't have a voice of our own. There's no community, and I know exactly why autistic people struggle. I've learned, and people don't know the reasons. They'll throw in like, yeah, it's hard for us to fit in because we're a little different, or maybe we have a rigid thinking system, or we're focused on inanimate objects, or our interests and stuff like that. But I know the real reason, and it boils down to authoritarian government repressing us in the schools. And then the trans come in and tell us that we struggle because we're trans.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast with that man right there, the founder of the Autistic Freedom Network, Sven Sharpen, who's a young man that has taken it into his heart, and like every other American has in their basic nature, and has answered the question, well, what can I do about it when we're talking about policy that affects autistic kids and parents? And Sven, this trans ideology thing is something that I learned from you when I met you. I wasn't aware of the significance of the numbers that the autistic kids are overwhelmingly able to be turned trans when they're faced with this ideology and they don't have the proper support. Why is that? Do you know yet why that is?
Well, it's for like a whole load of reasons, and some of which we're figuring out now, and others that have been known for quite a while. Like, obviously, because of what we've been put through, it makes us much more vulnerable. Like, if you take away the meaning in someone's life and tell them they're worthless, and then you take away their socialization and their freedom, like, of course they're going to struggle. Like, what do you think's going to happen? And then, the trans cult obviously saw this and we're like, you know what? We've got a ton of people we can indoctrinate with our ideology. And so they've deliberately made it more appealing to us. I'd say it's deliberate. And they make transness, as they call it, they define it in a way that sounds almost exactly like what it's like to grow up autistic. So, of course, they're making this attractive to us, and they're also coming into our communities and saying, "Oh, you're all struggling because you're trans, and autistic people are more likely to be trans." And they've invented an entire new lie that I think will make the others look like compliments by comparison. And it's like the worst thing they're going to do is say that all autistic people are trans and then get a government to mandate that we are all trans. So if you're diagnosed with autism, you wouldn't even have an option. You'd be forced to go through the process whether you want to or not. And, honest to God, I hope that doesn't happen. And since we got Trump back last year, it shouldn't happen. But I'm still going to keep an eye on those politicians in Denver that legislated that horrible bill that I described back in the end of April when they were about to pass it. So it's the worst bill ever. And Gavin Newsom, the guy in California, he vetoed the California equivalent bill, and yet Polis here signed it. So it's like it's become worse than California, and it's even worse than Canada. The event that I was at, Billboard Chris was there, and he says it's even worse than Canada. So it's really bad. And if you're autistic, I mean, this is coming for you. And they're trying to drive a wedge between families and kids. Like, of course, that's their goal. And they certainly do it with the special education stuff. And online, oh boy, if you're cut off from socialization, you're going to be online a lot.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's a lot of influencers who are trans who made transness seem appealing to people on the spectrum and shared their stories of, oh my gosh, I'm the happiest person ever now that I've gone through the process. And instead, you end up worse off than you were before. And now I'm seeing that a lot of detransitioners are on the spectrum, and including the prominent ones that you've probably seen across all these platforms that we're on. And I've grown to know them pretty well. In fact, I just talked with one of them last week. And, it's a whole load of stories. And it's like, these stories aren't even all that different from mine. I mean, for the detrans women, it's the undiagnosed perspective, which we are hearing a lot of, but the diagnosed perspective is still something that needs to be talked about, especially considering Big Pharma cares more about money and power rather than the well-being of kids. So half of these detransitioners, like with parts of their bodies missing and their frames deformed and their endocrine systems damaged, like a lot of them will go on to not have children or you have any normal relationship life anymore. Like it's bad enough before, but it's even worse after because your body doesn't work properly anymore because you were led to believe a lie.
Yeah, I think that's why the suicide rates for post-surgery and post, chemical castration, those kind of activities is so high. I mean, it's higher than even veterans' suicide rates, which is the highest that in society until this trans issue exploded several years ago. You mentioned in the last segment that you were able to defeat that attempt to get you to do that. What's your secret? How did you successfully do that?
Well, that was purely the grace of God. There's no other way to explain it. Like, I held on to faith, and I knew deep down that that stuff didn't work. I was raised Christian,
Hmm.
and I knew I wasn't fully alone. I knew Jesus was there for me. So that's that's what prevented me from going trans, is just the fact that I knew that that stuff didn't work. And really, it's the grace of God. I mean, there's no way that without God I would be a detransitioner right now, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're using an indoctrination method and a tactic from a concept out of critical theory, which comes out of the school of Marxism, or the Frankfurt School is its
Yeah.
modern name, that came into Columbia University when they escaped from Germany in the 1930s. And that critical theory approach is to convince you that you're oppressed, and and there's an oppressor out there. And I think your description of the school system, before they get to the autistic kids with the trans thing, they are oppressing them the way I saw it, and from what you're talking about, right? So you really are feeling like you're the oppressed, and that the oppressors can be stopped. And so once they get to you and start preaching the trans ideology and transition at you, I could see where people would fall for that.
Yeah. It's it could be all by design for all I know, but yeah, they
Mm.
if they don't have an oppression story of the past to bring up, they'll just create one so that they
Hmm.
can make kids feel oppressed. And even though a lot of groups who feel like they're oppressed, I mean, the real oppressor is the radical left, globalists, Marxists in the system. But
Hmm.
I mean, for the autistic spectrum in particular, it's like it's easily the worst for us. Like you mentioned like the suicide rate of detransitioners after they go through the process is 19 times higher than for those before. But, the autistic suicide rate, I imagine, is pretty high too. I haven't been able to find anything that says any exact numbers, but I'd say that's the highest in the world. That doesn't include detransitioners. So it's pretty
Hmm.
bad. And like, it's, I don't even know what else to say at this point other than it's just pure evil. We gotta go after them, and that's who I'm fighting against. We're fighting against the radical schools that are doing this to us, and of course the
Hmm.
trans cult that did this to us, and all the way up to the top. I mean, that's where we're gonna have to go. But it starts with bringing people on the spectrum together through the Autistic Freedom Network that I created,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to get the word out about all of this stuff that's happening. So,
Yeah.
this whole like Marxist ideology of oppressor versus oppressed is just creating oppression, and we got to do something about it. And
Yeah.
being on the spectrum, like you've been caught up into this. We didn't choose to be caught up into this.
Hmm.
So it's time to have a more logical, actually patriotic, God, family, country approach to all of this. So we need to fight it off like actual Americans, not a bunch of cowards. So
Yeah, I
that's what I'm here
found
to do.
that I'm glad you said that about your faith and your Christianity, because I found that when people actually study the Bible and see how the reality is that God created men and women, and that He had a design for that and a design for the family, and those kind of things, it helps folks that are faced with this indoctrination to understand the difference between the real science and the Genesis, so to speak, in the book of Genesis
Mhm.
of God's work, versus
Yeah.
this fake stuff that they're being presented with,
Yeah, the
that a
whole
man can actually
worldly.
become a woman, and have
Yeah.
children and those kind of things like a real woman, which is never going to be possible, in any
Right.
sense of the word, based on the biblical construction of men and women, and marriage and the family and children, those kind of things. The Before we get to this last break, uh, when you're talking to other autistic folks of your age, how do you help counsel them to be wary of this issue?
Well, I mean, I haven't found a whole lot just yet. I'm only in the first year, but I have found a couple. And I mean, they've already kind of gone through a lot of the stuff that I've been through. But for
Hmm.
future generations of autistic kids, like, well, just Trust your parents more than your doctors. The doctors will frame themselves as the expert and frame the parents as being inexperienced when that's just not true. My parents knew what they were doing, and the doctors and teachers just didn't. So, to future generations of autistic kids, just don't trust anyone other than your parents. Your parents know you the best, and you deserve to have a perfect, loving relationship with them. And of course, a relationship with Christ that'll guide you through this mess that the world has created. So, that's my
Absolutely.
advice.
Well, we got to take our last break. When we come back, I want to talk about your activism and encouraging people to vote. And is the network planning on creating an activist network of autistic citizens to help fight this stuff? We'll be right back with the founder of the Autistic Freedom Network, Sven Sharpen.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Hey everybody, it's me, Sven here, and I'm voting in my local school board elections, and these are arguably more important than the presidential elections we had. So this is my vote. I'm about to cast it. Yeah, so these elections are more important than presidential elections. Want to know why? Because these are the people taking care of your kids in school. And if you don't have school choice like I didn't, then you're going to have a lot of problems. And the bad school board members are they're gonna indoctrinate your kids. Like, this is a serious issue that we need to talk about. These are more important than presidential elections. You get out and vote in these elections, because if we let the wrong people get in, they're gonna hate America, they're gonna indoctrinate your kids to hate America, and the kids on the spectrum are gonna get the worst end of it. And we cannot allow this to continue. We wanna have school board members that will protect children, one of which that I just voted for has a kid on the spectrum. So that's great. We gotta get the right people into our school boards so that children are never harmed again. They can't vote. It's up to us adults to protect them. So we have to vote for them. They're on the ballot. Go vote in your school board elections. And before I end this, I'm gonna tell you something. You cannot say an election was rigged if you did not vote in it. The reason your side didn't win is because you didn't vote. You cannot say an election was rigged if you didn't vote in it. So just get out and vote. Election day tomorrow. Let's go and take our country back. God bless you and God bless America.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here on the Worldview Tube network. And Worldview Tube, folks, is a Christian worldview. That's what this network is all about, and why I was excited to have my show on this network when the founder and CEO of the network, Brandon House, gave us the opportunity, because it's a network that provides the Christian worldview at Worldview Tube. So check them out at Rumble. Sign up, subscribe to there. You can subscribe to the Rob Maness Show on Rumble too, or anywhere else where you find social media, like on X, where we do our X simulcast for our space and take questions from our audience. And we love having you there. And my guest today is that man right there, Sven Sharpen, the founder of the Autistic Freedom Network. And Sven, as part of your plans for the organization, are you going to do something like follow the model of Scott Pressler at Early Vote Action and build a base of advocates and citizen action folks, especially from the autistic community?
Well, I know I look kind of like Scott Pressler, but I'm going to take more of a Charlie Kirk approach. In fact, one of the clips you showed was posted on September 9th, the day before the tragedy of the year. And so before, I was just going to sort of follow his lead and create an organization similar to his, Turning Point USA, and follow leads of other good detransitioners like Chloe Cole and Laura Becker, who I've talked to both of them. They're both amazing people, and you know, God bless them. But after what happened, my mission has taken a completely new meaning. And it's like, I'm going to follow the footsteps of Charlie Kirk and do for the autistic spectrum what he did for the rest of the young generations, which means, you know, not only creating a voting network, but also going to places across the country and having rallies of people on the spectrum and telling them they're worth fighting for. And you know, we're also going to focus on self-improvement and self-control as opposed to basically the opposite of what the special education people do. So instead of saying, oh, the world's better because you're in it, it's more like, is the world better because you're in it? And that's a Charlie Kirk line right there. So we're going to focus certainly on self-improvement as well as just getting people on the spectrum to understand why they're in the situation they're in. And the first thing I'm going to do is just organize those that haven't yet been captured by this radical left ideology. And then from there, we can start going across the country, hopefully to university campuses, like create chapters or at least partner up with Turning Point. You know, if they're watching this, that's great. But partner up with Turning Point and YAF and others to let them know what's been happening and how we can fix it. Like my mission page on my website has 20 goals on what we should do. And the first one is just to create this sort of movement. Like detransitioners, a lot of them are on the spectrum, especially the leaders, like the top ones, in prominence, they really lead the movement. And if they can create a movement, like so can the rest of the people on the spectrum. I mean, a lot are detransitioners themselves, and even for those of us that aren't detransitioners, we've still been subject to a harmful medical and educational practice. Even though our bodies aren't damaged, our lives and our minds are still feeling the effects of all of this. Like it's mental mutilation in a way. Like your body might be intact, but your mind has been dealing with quite a lot of stuff, both chemically and just psychologically. It's insane what's been happening to us. So it's time for the people of the spectrum to have their own version of Turning Point USA. And unlike all the other organizations that we've seen, they're all woke. I haven't found one conservative one. And that's ended now that I've created the first ever America-centric, God-centric organization for people on the spectrum. And it just goes for everyone on the spectrum. You don't absolutely have to follow my worldview to be a part of my network, but you have to understand, you know, we're doing this for a reason and we are a conservative organization. So we want to help autistic people live the lives that our Lord created us to live, which is, you know, to be raised naturally, to get a, you know, have a career in something you're good at. You know, God calls you in your earthly life to get married, to have lots of adorable babies, and just repeat the process over and over again. Like a diagnosis of autism shouldn't ever stop you from doing that stuff. And quite frankly, it shouldn't define who we are. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I want to be the sort of leader that for the spectrum that Charlie Kirk was for the young generation. So I'm following more of the Charlie Kirk playbook rather than Scott Pressler.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, in just a few hours, I'm going to be speaking to the new TPUSA chapter at the Southeastern Louisiana University a couple hours from here where I'm at. And I will mention the Autistic Freedom Network in my talk there, and I'll incorporate that in my talk and connect people that want to connect with you about that, because I think that's very important. I like that approach. And you sound like Charlie. You know, he said many times, you know, fall in love, go have babies, and live a life of faith and help others. You know, over and over, he would say that. As a matter of fact, in one of his last interviews, he was asked, "What do you want to be remembered for?" And that he said, "For my faith," and that I wasn't afraid to tell the truth. Those are the things that I value. By knowing him early on in our political careers and then following and supporting his organization as he supported mine. You mentioned the goals page on your website. That's a pretty long list. Are there any others you want to highlight before we get to the end of the show about your objectives for the organization? And of course, we want you to tell people how to sign up to the organization and support it too.
Yeah. Well, some of the other goals I mentioned are to go after the radical trans ideology and the radical trans Marxist extremists inside of autistic communities to cleanse them all out. We got to get them out so that people on the spectrum can have more freedom to not only decide who they are, but to actually have a good path forward. And I know deep down that everyone, like a lot of people on the spectrum that I've seen both online and in person and in shows, they all want to have their own families. They want to have their own lives and their own way of participating in society. And we all deserve our own part in the world. So, I mean, as a Christian, I believe I'm not of this world, but we got to improve it and make it better for future generations of young people. So, I know deep down that a lot of autistic people want to have families and careers and things they're good at, and that's what I'm certainly going to support. And we're also going to certainly go after this radical special needs cartel. Like, it's practically a term meaning undesirable. It's a cover-up term in my mind. And so we got to go after them. We got to go after the politicians and the radical NGOs paying for it all, like Autism Speaks, and other organizations that promote that alongside trans ideology, and go after all the misconceptions, debunk them, get rid of the whole, oh, autistic people are gross, so that we can go from being the last people that someone would want to date to being one of the first. And unlike every other organization for folks on the spectrum that I've seen, we're actually going to be autistic people first, and our needs will be covered first and foremost. And let's be honest, I mean, Charlie Keeble, another guy on the spectrum, he's from the UK. He talked about that we should be proud of to be in the country we live in and to be a part of, America, or I guess Britain, as he's from. But we deserve to be American patriots. We deserve to love Jesus. We deserve to have the life that God created us to live. We deserve to live the American dream. And that's what we're here to fight for. And that's what I'm going to fight for. So, and it starts here and now. And that's what I'm going to do.
Do you think that's, again, I couldn't say it any better. I didn't realize until I started talking with you, Sven, that the unemployment rate for autistic men and women is extremely high. It's very difficult for them to get employment opportunities, and they have trouble in the dating each other. So the challenge is much greater to do the things that Charlie said we should all be doing, which is fall in love, have babies, work in a field that we want to work in, and be successful, and take care of others through our faith. Are there any programs out there existing now to help autistic people get gainful employment?
I mean, there are some, but as I've mentioned earlier, they're all really woke, and others just, I mean, we haven't seen any improvement in the quality of life. Like, there's barely been any change in this massive unemployment rate, and a college degree doesn't even make a difference. It's still the same, which just proves that college is in fact a scam. I've known this since I was like 15 years old. And, obviously we're going to fix this. And of course, focusing on self-improvement is going to help a lot, but also just, again, debunking all the lies, saying there's other lies out there that say we're lazy and disgusting and undesirable. Like, it makes people not want to go out with us. It makes people not want to hire us. I mean, you can not put autism in your resume. I didn't do that, but there's still a lot of other issues because of your past and the problems with the special education. Like, you didn't get a proper education, and you didn't really have much in the way of experience. And it's just the whole way it is now. Like, it's really hard to get a job, just no matter who you are these days. But we deserve to be able to prove skill. Like, it's all based on rigged credentials and hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. I mean, that's just not worth it. There's a huge shortage in trades, and there's a lot of autistic people that'd be really good at trades. So, and you could make decent money from that. So we deserve to have careers in what we're good at, and we're always good at something. You are never good at nothing. You are always good at something.
Yeah.
So
if you want to be in the trades, learn to weld and come to South Mississippi. We have shipbuilding operations here. They're down thousands of welders all the time. So if people want to be in the trades, come to South Mississippi and learn to weld. There's a free program at the local community college, the Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, that teaches welding. Tell folks to come on down here if they can get here. And if they are here, they should be taking advantage of those kind of things. Well, Tell people where they can go to find you at your website, what your website is, and how they can help by donations or whatever else.
Yeah, so I'm on X, Instagram, and YouTube. I guess Facebook too, but I don't really use that. So I'm on those first three. And it's at Sven_Sharpen. And make sure you spell it correctly as it is on screen right here, SCHARPEN. Everyone gets it wrong when they don't see it spelled out. So make sure you spell that right at Sven_Sharpen. But you could probably just look up Sven Sharpen and you'll find me. So, but do make sure you spell it right because, you know, I'm right here for you. If you have someone on the spectrum you know or are on the spectrum yourself, you know, tell them about me. It's just,
This is Brannon House Live. Whether the issue is law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, government, or national security, Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon House.
And welcome to the broadcast on this November 18th, 2025. Boy, November is going by fast, isn't it? November 18th, 2025. We're going to have on David Pine tonight for a few minutes. I want to talk about this headline here. Russia could drown Britain, but it's also not just that. It's also America. Putin's new super weapons that could obliterate the West in seconds. How Kremlin can trigger Armageddon at the flick of a switch with flying Chernobyl, tsunami torpedo, and space nuke. We'll talk about that. And then what about this war between Russia and Ukraine? Here we are now, about 10 months into the Trump administration. He was going to end that war on day one, but it's not ending. And I want to ask David tonight about why is it not ending? And why did he not have, President Trump, his summit with Putin? We'll talk about that with David Pine, a quick update. And then, of course, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia went to the White House today. We'll bring you some of the footage, and I'm going to talk to Robert Spencer of jihadwatch.org, jihadwatch.org. Why should many of the family members of 9/11 be absolutely incensed today? Who is the Crown Prince? Why is this a problem to be giving this kind of welcome, military jets flying over, all this pomp and circumstance? Why is this a problem? Why is this actually troubling to many of us? You'll hear from Robert Spencer tonight of jihadwatch.org. Greg Abbott signed, I guess, a document today, executive order, claiming Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations that they are a foreign terrorist and transnational criminal organization. I'm going to ask Robert about this. Is this just more posturing by Greg Abbott? And then Annie Cyrus has got to come on for a few minutes. I got to let poor Annie vent because she's beside herself today, and rightfully so, over what she's also been seeing. And I want to get her take on it as well, what happened today at the White House. Okay? Let's see. Now, I guess the House passed the bill to let out the Epstein list. And apparently, it's also now passed the Senate. Let's see. I think I have a video here, a little video. Here we go. Listen to this. Listen. Here we go. Just happened just a little bit earlier.
Without objection, so ordered.
The Senate has now passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes.
There you go. So they're going to pass it, or they have passed it. Which one is it, Logan? They passed it. So now it goes to Trump's signature. I guess he's going to sign it. Curious will be to see if everything's in there. Or did they clean it up? I don't know. President Trump was on a roll. I don't know when this was, the other day. On Air Force One. Got upset with a lady that asked a question. Listen to this.
You're going to find out what did he know with respect to Bill Clinton, with respect to the head of Harvard, with respect to all of those people that he knew, including J.P. Morgan Chase. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead.
Incriminating in the file, sir.
Quiet.
Woo! What?
Venezuela's
Quiet piggy. Ouch. I don't think he should be doing that. I don't think he should be doing that. That's not presidential. Can you see Logan? See if you can. I can do it probably faster than you can. Let's see. President Reagan with Helen Thomas. Now, Helen was kind of lefty, that's for sure. Absolute lefty. But can you see Ronald Reagan talking that way to Helen Thomas? Well, maybe you're going to have to help me, Logan. I'm going to have to go to another channel. I was going to show a video of Reagan and Helen Thomas exchanging words back and forth. Because, boy, and Sam Donaldson did the same thing to poor President Reagan. See, President Reagan and Helen Thomas. Let's see if I can find a little exchange between the two of them. Yeah, here we go. Oh, come on.
The Bespoke
commercial.
AI family.
Oh, we'll wait for that to pass for a second. I'm kind of going back to the 80s here. Here we go.
Directly or indirectly, at least twice, that the Contras were benefiting from the Iran arms sale. Is that true, or were you deceived and lied to by Admiral Poindexter and Colonel North? And I'd like to follow on. Mr. President, you didn't answer the question on North or Poindexter. Did they deceive you? You didn't answer whether Poindexter and North deceived.
He didn't say, quiet, piggy. He would have never done that. That was June 16th, 1981. I mean, and Helen Thomas could get in your face. But he didn't do that kind of thing. He tried to stay presidential. But, yeah, I've never quite seen a president do those kind of things. I would think Melania would be telling him, don't do that kind of stuff. There's a midterm coming up. And you got to get out there and work for your party and they're women voters. And you just can't be doing that. But there you go. That was a little shocking when I saw that today. So for what it's worth. Let's see, what else do we have of interest before we go to our first guest? Let's see here. Oh, this is interesting. The New York Post. Washington man severely ill with unpredictable virus never before seen in humans. Logan, you got some scary music to go with that? You got any scary music on your little machine in there? Oh, he's got a machine in there that makes all kinds of noises. That seems like a October 31st headline. Oh, that's not scary. Washington man severely ill with unpredictable virus never seen before in humans. Let's see if you crack a joke, but we'll take it. I don't know. Don't you love these headlines? Because you know what? I see these headlines about people bleeding from the eyes and different things. And I'm not making light of people that have something like that. But I see these kind of headlines at certain unnamed websites. I won't say them because they do put out some good news. I don't want to ridicule them because they do put out some good stories. But you see these headlines and then you never hear a word about it again. So I generally am not quick to get too excited about that. I'm not too quick to get excited about that because I want to say, well, let's see what happens. Because a lot of times that's a headline and then nothing. It's a headline and then nothing. All right, let's see. Anything else over at Worldview? Oh, yeah. Look at this. Arson attacks on Christian churches rise to record high in Germany. Now, I wonder why. I wonder what would be causing record high attacks in Germany on churches. If you have something new happening, you have to ask, what has changed? What new thing has occurred that might be setting the stage for this? Oh, I don't know, maybe importing a gazillion Islamists? Breitbart reports the number of anti-Christian arson attacks on churches in Germany has surged to a record high amid a climate of growing intolerance. A report from the Observatory on Intolerance and Discrimination Against Christians in Europe found. Its annual report published this week based on data collected from European police forces The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and various civil society groups reported there were 33 arson attacks against German churches in 2024. This represented a record high for the country and stood at the most of any country in Europe last year. For several years now, we have been dealing with an escalating problem. Excrement in holy water fonts and confessionals, decapitated statues of Christ and saints, cigarette butts and other litter in front of devotional images, damaged prayer and hymn books, overturned pews, smashed windows, altar pieces, and entire altars destroyed by arson. Oh, yeah. Remember that? Rwandan migrant allegedly murdered a Catholic priest, sentenced to 4 years for French cathedral arson. Well, I think it has to do with all the illegals you bring in there, all the troublemakers. And I bet you some of these might be Islamist. I don't know. Probably not all of them. Paris, churches targeted by arson attacks 3 times within days. Wow, that's one headline. So there you go. That's in the news. And of course, we're going to continue to see, I'm afraid, the rise of attacks on Christians. You can use big C, little c for that one. Christians. Yep. Let's see. Anything else? I guess not. Oh, you go to worldviewreport.com. We have your daily aggregated news site. Your daily aggregated news site. Let's see here. Oh, this is good news. I got to say something positive about the Trump administration. I really appreciate this. I'm not kidding. ICE partners launch initiative to protect 450,000 children from unvetted sponsors. Immigration and Customs, or ICE, launched an initiative aimed at protecting these 450,000 who were illegally smuggled into the United States and then placed with unvetted sponsors. You know, we dealt with this topic a lot with Tara Rodas. So I got to say, good job. Thank you, Trump administration. Thank you. I told you guys, when I see something I like, I want to say it. When I see something I don't like, I got to say it. This is something I'm very happy about. Thank you, President Trump and the Trump administration, for leading the efforts here to find out where these 450,000 children are and if they're safe. I guess they're doing welfare checks on nearly 500,000 children to ensure they are living safely and not subjected to any exploitation, so says the DHS. Well, I'm all for that. I think that's a very good idea. Let's see. What else? Ooh, this is kind of interesting, Logan. Have you seen this? This is the, look at this. Have you seen this, Logan? The Economist magazine. This is their magazine cover. The World Ahead 2026. Well, there you go. What do you see in there? I see a raised fist with a handcuff around it. I see a rocket. Now, Logan, I see a ship here that looks like, that almost looks, that one on the far left there, doesn't that look like a cargo container with rockets coming off of it? Who's talked about that, Logan? Yeah, me. It's in my movie Sabotage in 2018, the Club K cargo system. That's interesting. What do the economists know? Oh, you know what's interesting, folks? Look at this. The satellite, Logan. What's the satellite doing? It's sending a signal down to the cargo container. Do you know that's exactly what I talk about in my documentary, Siege, or Sabotage in 2018. That the lid, do you have any of that footage, Logan? You can roll that in there? Maybe, I know it's short notice, I know. But in that documentary, I show how a lid pops up on the Club K cargo system. And up pops 2 to 4 silos. that can have missiles on them with small miniaturized nuclear weapons on the end, known as a beach ball. The technology was actually developed, I think, by a guy out of Iraq. Let's go back to that, Logan. I'm just seeing that right now. I mean, I looked at this earlier today, but I didn't see that. The fact that it's got a satellite sending a signal to these boxcars on a ship and then something shooting off. Very interesting. Now, why would The Economist magazine do that? And they're highlighting the 250th anniversary of America. Wow. Now, what is this? What is this, Logan? It looks like is that an Xbox controller right there next to the birthday cake, to the right of the birthday cake? It's a PS what? Hey, PlayStation controller? What's the line going to? What is that on the other end? It's a brain. You're right. Huh. You're going to hook your brain to the video games. Notice the two tanks. One on the right, the red, one on the left. You know what else I'm seeing here, Logan? Look at that on the far right. On the far right there. What is that? That guy is holding what looks to be like a shoulder-launched, like man pads. Shoulder-launched missiles. That's what that looks like. What are they trying to tell us? You got the dollar sign in red. Can't be a good sign. Anybody else noticing anything? I see a lot of syringes. And then we just reported on some guy with a virus never seen in humans before tonight. Who knows? Look at this. That's a gavel in the center there, the red gavel coming down, and it's cracking the piece of wood that it's being hammered on. Got somebody voting there. See that. Robots, see that. Stock markets all over the place. I see that. Is anything else jumping out? You got the robotic dogs. I see that up the top. Looks like Zelensky over here on the far right. You got a submarine, an eyepiece of a submarine sticking up out of the water. Plenty of satellites orbiting. I get that. I guess the one that disturbs me the most, though, is what looks like the Club K car, the satellite sending a signal to it, because that's exactly what's in my documentary. That you get a satellite command, can open the lid, and they could shoot these things off in the U.S. And we have no defense system for this. We don't have like an Iron Dome here. I bet you I'm missing something, but that's the stuff that's jumping out at me the most. I see Xi Jinping, what looks to be Benjamin Netanyahu. That's the one that jumps out. What's that? The person at the bottom? Which one? I don't know either. What's that guy like is that a robot carrying a box? I don't know what that's about. I mean, I guess that's taking all your jobs. But yeah, the one that gets me the most is the Club K car. I'm just seeing that on the air. I did not have time to look at this as closely as I should have before we went on the air, but wow. That's The Economist magazine, The World Ahead 2026. Well, save this in the archive. We may be coming back to this. You know, the elite, the globalists like to kind of predict stuff. So who knows? Who knows? Anyway, there you go. That's all at worldviewreport.com, your daily aggregated news site. All right, hey, before we get started tonight, look at this right here. I drink it every day. It's called Gatatana. It's a plankton. It's all natural, nothing added. I take a scoop. I drink it every day because one scoop is the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. Goes down to your cellular level, the mitochondria, to feed your cells, boost your immune system, and help you fight off the bad stuff. And there's a lot of science behind this. And you know the guy that developed it, I'm not making claims, but the guy that developed it had a terminal cancer case. He started eating and drinking this because he was raising it for his like starfish or crayfish. Went in for a biopsy, 11 biopsies, came back benign. Right? Remember that? There it is. There's a picture of him and his daughter. Terminal diagnosis. He went on to live another 10 years, I'm told, retired to Hawaii. That's how Global Plankton Alliance was born. And Melissa and I drink this every day, one scoop in water. We give half a scoop to Dolly. Can we go to the Dolly cam, Logan? No? Because that's a great shot of her right now. Oh, she just woke up. Oh, you fixed it? Well, it's too late. But she was falling off her bed, so sound asleep. But the blood was running to her head, so she sat up. Get every bit of this. There you go. All right. MelissaHouseGPA.com. I think it's a great way to support us and your health at the same time. Of course, all our other sponsors, you know them. I'm not going to belabor the point. Got to keep going here tonight. All the other sponsors are there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. By the way, a lot of these things make great Christmas gifts. A satellite phone, solar generator, bulletproof backpack, and so much more. I would not be without plenty of pharmaceuticals, as in the antibiotics. I would definitely be stocking up on those. Actually, you could barter with those, folks. Something happens to our economy, or there's a war or cyber attack. By the way, we were down for a while today. One of the companies we use went down and took down a lot of big companies for a while, didn't it, Logan? Including X. We were down too. So is that a cyber attack? I don't know. But folks, if they cyber attack the grid, we go down for a while and you need antibiotics, will you have them on hand? I will. What if you wanted to barter with them? I would order extra and barter with these things. I would also be bartering with freeze-dried food. In fact, why don't you go over there real quick, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. I have 3 years worth of freeze-dried food at least. Because I want to be able to barter with it if I want to. Okay? Not only, this is real food, by the way. Real food. It's good. We put it in front of people. They've eaten it. They didn't even know. They didn't even know that it was freeze-dried food until we told them. But I would order enough of this to be able to barter with it. The dollar goes kaput. People are realizing the dollar's losing value, and you can buy more today than you can next week. They're going to run to the store, start buying things they know they need. Your stores are going to go bare. Not to mention with food inflation, what are you going to do if we move into hyperinflation like they did in Venezuela a few years ago? Literally, the middle class were eating out of garbage trucks. I have the video. It's in my documentary, Siege. So I would have plenty of freeze-dried food on hand. And I would also not only use it for that, but I'd use it for bartering if I have to. Because people have to have food. So do what you want. This is a great way to support us and yourself. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. All right, Worldview Store. And we have the heaters and the ovens and all kinds of other stuff as well. Worldviewstore.com. There she is. Yeah, there she is. The other shot was better, though. She was laying off the bed. But Dolly, hello. You say hello to your fam? The fam. Fam's saying hello to you tonight, Dolly. Yeah, back to sleep. All right. Yeah, that big sigh. You see that big sigh she let out? Yeah, life is rough, isn't it, Dolly? You have it so hard. All right. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Let's get started. Joining me now is Robert Spencer of jihadwatch.org. Well, we got plenty to talk about with the Crown Prince in Washington, D.C. today, getting the royal treatment at the White House. Take a look at this, please. All right, let's stop right there. The flag. They even had some horses go by, which I'll show that too. That flag, that's the Saudi flag. Well, it sure looks awfully similar to the flag of Hamas, does it not?
Well, it's the same thing in a certain sense. It says there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. And the flag of Hamas, the flag of the Taliban, they say the same thing. So really, it's a different design, but the sentiments are identical.
Mm-hmm. How does it make you feel seeing that all over the White House there and next to our American flag? Let's say Robert Spencer was president. Number one, would you have welcomed this guy to the White House, this Saudi prince, number one? And number two, if you felt like you needed to meet with him for some reason, would you be doing all of this and having his flag everywhere, knowing what it says and what it's really declaring?
No, certainly not. I think that there are certainly circumstances under which it might be necessary from a geopolitical standpoint to talk to the man, to meet with the man, but to do it with all this pomp and circumstance is, I think, yet another indication of the fact that this administration seems to have forgotten everything it once knew about Islamic Jihad terrorism. And I say forgotten because unlike other administrations, which never showed any indication of knowing what jihad was all about or wanting to know, the Trump administration, the president has in the past spoken about Islam, about the jihad terror threat more realistically than any of
seems low in my ear
of recent times.
Wow. Well, here's another video. Here's one. This kind of bothered me. There's the horses with that flag too. I don't know. I just don't like seeing our guys carrying that flag. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You agree?
It does. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Also, when have we seen this kind of ceremony, this kind of pageantry with other heads of state who visited? I don't remember seeing this with Netanyahu or with Zelensky or with the President Macron of France or anybody else when they've come to the White House. So why is this guy getting this lavish treatment? He's the last one who should have gotten it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this guy is also, we'll get into what he's been accused of, but most Americans, have they forgotten about Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11, Iran? I mean, wasn't it Saudi Arabia that didn't stamp their passports? That was Iran that didn't stamp their passports, so you would see Iran on there. But the Saudi government had to be involved with these hijackers in some way, right? Their hands weren't just, wasn't just like, oh, some rogue Americans go do something. You can't always blame the government. But I'm believing that the Saudis had to have some involvement in the 9/11 attacks, right?
There's a great deal of circumstantial evidence there. For one thing, the fact that the Saudi involvement was redacted for so many years. While George W. Bush was there holding hands with King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, while the U.S. continued to act as if Saudi Arabia is a reliable ally, in the middle of all that, the 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report about Saudi involvement were completely covered up. Finally, under heavy pressure, the Obama administration released some of it. We saw that some of the hijackers had high-level connections to people in the Saudi government, that there were all kinds of questionable things going on. Like, I can even tell you one from my own experience. I knew a guy who was very ill. He's since passed away. And he was at the Mayo Clinic the whole summer of 2001. And he told me after 9/11 that everybody else that was there was Saudi princes at the Mayo, because they wanted the best healthcare in the world. So they're at the Mayo Clinic. And that on the morning of September 11th, 2001, he woke up, he goes downstairs, and the place is empty. The Saudis have all cleared out. And that was before the news hit of the planes hitting the towers. And so, you know, that's just one little thing. There's hundreds of pieces of evidence like that. And indications that Prince Bandar, that others were involved at a very high level, or at least were in touch with the hijackers. And yet there's never been any accountability, never been any acknowledgement on the part of the US government, primarily because we have such extensive business dealings with the Saudis, and especially during the Biden regime and the Obama administration before it, there was the attempt to end domestic energy production and make us completely dependent upon the Saudis. So the last thing they wanted to do was antagonize them, although, of course, Joe Biden ended up doing that anyway.
I think we have a clip from some of the 9/11 families, don't we, on this today, guys? Okay. I would love to see if we could find some clips of any of the 9/11 families, if anyone can find those. I don't know if any of the 9/11 families are out saying anything today. I don't know, but I would think I would be if I had a family member I lost in any of those attacks. I don't know if you're referring, Logan, to the ABC clip, but here's the ABC clip. Listen to this. Here we go.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC. They're going to psych. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files is, I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me, but he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax, and ABC's your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
So why not just sign it now?
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump, and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible, and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was with him all the time. That creep of the fund guy was with him all the time. What's his name?
Reid Hoffman.
Who? Reid Hoffman. I don't know Reid Hoffman, but I know he spends a lot of money on the radical left. Reid Hoffman, in my opinion, should be under investigation. He's a sleazebag. And those are the people, but they don't get any press, they don't get any news, and you're not after the radical left because you're a radical left network. But I think the way you ask a question with the anger and the meanness is terrible. You ought to go back and learn how to be a reporter. No more questions.
Well, that was longer than I expected and related mostly to Jeffrey Epstein. But I wanted to go ahead and let it play because what do you think the prince is thinking sitting there?
What the prince is thinking probably is that it's amazing how these Americans tolerate this to start with, because the Saudi government doesn't even get that far. They don't have any kind of free press. They don't have anything remotely approaching a free press. So the idea of MBS, the crown prince there, Mohammed bin Salman, or his father, the king, engaging with any journalists in that way is inconceivable. At the same time, of course, it's a wonderful thing to see because Trump was entirely right. Although I did note that he did scold, and I think this must be the reason for showing the clip now, is that he did upbraid the reporter for asking him about Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post reporter who was murdered in the Saudi embassy in Turkey a few years back when he went in to get some papers related to his marriage. And so that is something that has been a stain on the Saudi regime's human rights record. I think it's entirely legitimate to ask the question. At the same time, I thought it was entirely legitimate for Trump to lay into ABC in that way. So it's kind of a shame that it was all mixed up together, because it would actually be good to see MBS explain what the deal was with Jamal Khashoggi. He just says he had nothing to do with it, as if it were some sort of a spontaneous thing happening in the Saudi embassy. Spontaneous murders don't happen in the Saudi embassy. This is a highly authoritarian state. And so it strains credulity for him to claim some distance from that. Now, Jamal Khashoggi was not a good man. He was Muslim Brotherhood. He was Muslim Brotherhood in the pages of the Washington Post. That in itself was a scandal, but that doesn't justify him being murdered. And so it should have been, the question really should have been asked and answered.
Okay, so let's see here. I do have a clip here by President Trump on this one. Here we go. Take a listen to this.
He's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
It's okay, just you ask, Mr. President, if you allow me to answer. You know, I feel painful about, you know.
Okay, so he's upset. President Trump was upset that the press asked about it. But if you let the press in, don't you think the press is going to ask that question, for Pete's sake? I mean, that's what reporters do, right?
Yeah, if you had asked me, what are they going to ask MBS and Trump?
Exactly.
It's going to be Khashoggi and Epstein. That's all they care about. They don't care about some trade deal. They don't even care that he's selling or giving, I don't know, F-35s to the Saudis. They only care about Epstein and Khashoggi and Epstein. That's the only thing they were ever going to be asking about. That was obvious. He should have known. If he didn't want them there, he shouldn't have brought them in.
I don't know if we have the longer version of that, Logan, because I think there's a minute and 23 seconds of it. I'd like to see the longer version of it real quick. All right, roll what you got.
Is it appropriate, Mr. President, for your family to be doing business in Saudi Arabia while
that's
you're
a good
president?
one.
Is that a conflict of interest? And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news, ABC fake news, one of the worst in the business. But I'll answer your question.
Thank you.
I have nothing to do with the family business. I have left, and when I've devoted 100% of my energy. What my family does is fine. They do business all over. They've done very little with Saudi Arabia, actually. I'm sure they could do a lot. and anything they've done has been very good. That's what we've done. We've built a tremendous business for a long time. I've been very successful. I decided to leave that success behind and make America very successful. And I've made America more successful by far than it ever was, and that it ever could have been, no matter who was president. There would be nobody bringing in $21 trillion, that I can tell you right now.
Okay, so what do you make of that, Robert?
Well, here again, the question wasn't answered. And so I think that, it's a difficult situation, Brandon, because I don't have any sympathy for these journalists. I feel the same way about ABC News as the president does. At the same time, you got to wonder, well, okay, we are there in the Oval Office with this authoritarian ruler of a state with a very poor human rights record that financed Muslim Brotherhood run mosques all over the United States just a few years ago, before admittedly it stopped doing that over the last few years, and Turkey has taken up the slack. But at the same time, this is supposed to be an ally of the United States. The United States is supposed to be in favor of certain principles, and this is a regime that doesn't seem to hold to those principles and actually seems to actively trample upon them, as with the killing of this Muslim Brotherhood operative journalist. So what's the deal? Are we not entitled to an explanation? And I wish that somebody from a real news agency would ask the president and ask MBS, and maybe we could get some answers then.
Well, here's an article from Forbes. I showed it the other day, dated November 14th. Here's everything we know about Trump's financial ties to Saudi Arabia. I think he has quite a bit of investments over there, and certainly some of his people around him, don't they?
Yeah. And so that's another thing you got to ask. Now, see, this is something that people who support the president have not really wanted to face, because we want to think, well, our guy, he's not Joe Biden. He's not Kamala Harris. He's America first. He's out for our best interests. Now, that's all true. And yet that doesn't mean that this man does everything right or that everything he does is perfect. There is nobody on earth that does not sin. And so you've got the fact that he does have these extensive dealings in Saudi Arabia. You got the same questions with Qatar and the very strange turn that he made. I was saying earlier that the administration seems to have forgotten what it knew about Islamic terror. And one of the things that I was basing that on was the fact that 9 years ago, Trump said Qatar is a chief sponsor of terror. And now they're our great ally, and they're helping sort out what's going to happen in Gaza. And what's changed? Absolutely nothing has changed. And yet we do know that Qatar gave an airplane to the president for Air Force One. So is it legitimate to ask that if there was some untoward activity going on here? And it's not, here again, it's a shame that the inquiry is foreclosed from the start, because the Democrats, in their authoritarianism and their fascism, they pursued Trump through the courts in a lot of bogus lawsuits for years. And so now it seems, if you even ask the question about anything that Trump is doing ethically, then people are going to say, oh, you're just like Joe Biden, or you're just like Merrick Garland. You're one of these corrupt officials trying to destroy people you hate by bogus legal means. Well, no, maybe they're legitimate questions sometimes. And we need to have honest answers.
Well, here's a screenshot of Forbes magazine. December 9, 2024, a month after Trump wins a second term in the White House, DAR Global announces 2 more Trump projects in Riyadh. These developments will redefine luxury living in Saudi Arabia's capital, end quote. Post an executive with the Saudi firm. 2025 of April. As global markets tumble in response to the president's tariff plans, Trump jets to Miami, where he attends a LIV golf dinner, leading into an event for the Saudi-backed league at his Trump National Doral Golf Resort. May of 2025, for the second time, Trump travels to Riyadh earlier in his term, kicking off a 3-nation tour of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all countries where the Trump organization is actively working on real estate deals with Saudi Arabia's Dar al Arkan. September 2025, Dar Global announces a second Trump property